Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Just want to double check everything's okay. So we have the entirety of Lebanon. We have a whole country that went dark. Mass power outage to last several days.
That's a huge deal. Wow.
It is. It's horrible, really. On Saturday, the entirety of Lebanon was plunged into darkness with the electrical grid shut down completely after the small Mediterranean country's two main power stations reportedly ran out of fuel. We have 6 million people in this country that have no power. It's not the wealthiest country in the world. It's been through civil war. It's been through a lot of trying times in reality. The official said that the state's electric company would try to use the Army's fuel oil reserve to operate power plants temporarily, but that would not happen anytime soon. Over the past months, major Lebanese cities and towns have experienced periodic blackouts, but this looks to be the worst and most far-reaching and long-lasting, increasing the misery of a Lebanese population still in the midst of economic crisis, persistent fuel shortage, which has seen local currency plunge by 90% since 2019. They've had mile-long lines at gas stations. This is not a good situation, and we sometimes we forget because everybody's life unless you're in the billionaire class, has gotten a little bit more difficult in the last year and a half to 2 years. But some of these countries around the globe, it's far tougher than it is, say, in the USA or even the UK, Canada, or Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so this is very, very sad. They say the power won't be back for a while. Can you imagine? How tough this would be if we had, say, the US go through this and it went out and they told us, well, it might last a week, might last more. As much as people have prepared, because I think way more people could be put into the prepper category now than just 3 years ago.
I think so too. There's a lot of people who have experienced certain outages. The big thing that I think helped wake up a lot of people is that thing that happened in Texas. And I don't want to go into too much detail because the algorithms might not like us talking about it. But a lot of people realized how they were not prepared for so many things. So, in some ways, even though it was bad, in some ways, it was a wake up call for a lot of people, which is, in that sense, good.
And you can see how people are thinking. I just looking at the top comment. Lebanon is a precursor to how events will unfold in Europe and in the US. Again, we are in most definitely trying times that are just about to get a lot tougher. So, we need to be as prepared as possible and mentally. And again, spiritually can support the mental side of things. When you feel really rooted spiritually and you have a good solid belief system. Belief systems can hinder sometimes, and other times they can most definitely help. There's that old saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to conform to any one system of belief either. We could still be our own unique people, and that's really the whole purpose of everything. It's the whole purpose of life itself. All we have to do is look at all the diversity around us. A mega drought is hammering the U.S. and North Dakota. It's worse than the Dust Bowl. And if you look at this drought monitor, I see it, and it is encroaching on northeastern Texas too, as you see. Abnormally dry. Noticing some areas that back in the spring were overflowing, and now what looked to be ponds and stuff, they're pretty much just trickles. So this is progressing. And of course, when we go into California and Nevada and Oregon, Washington, Idaho, over into Montana, look at Colorado. There's a lot of deep red and that deep dark brown. exceptional and extreme. That seems to be just spreading more and more. And even over in North Carolina, you could see abnormally dry, the yellow popping its head up. This is really a horrible situation, and I just feel like it doesn't have to be. I think that the technology is there, that this doesn't have to be at all in this day and age. And this gets into some cases of some people, what they're going through. Again, the small farmer has been just so beaten up and wiped out globally. And we have people like Gil Bates buying up farmland. We have these mega corporations buying up housing so they can make mega profits. When you even look at the fact that there's not clean water available to so many people on the planet, and then you have a billionaire class that's just hoarding energy, supplies, resources, it's really a sign of an extremely sick society.
It is. It's really, really sad, and it's that imbalance is what makes things so sick and disturbed.
Exactly. Joey and Scott Bailey are sitting in their kitchen trying to figure out how they're going to get through the next few months. Just your grass hay that we would spend $30 a bale on, people are spending $150 a bale, and they're driving 250 miles to get it. They own a ranch on a remote prairie about 60 miles south of the U.S.-Canada border in the heart of what locals boast is the capital of North Dakota's cattle country, McHenry County. County is also one of the most drought-plagued places in the nation, where comparisons are now being drawn to the Great Dust Bowl. Ranchers have been forced to sell off their herds at historic rates, and they're now worried they won't have enough feed to keep their remaining cows alive in the winter. The Baileys sold 20 cows a few months back because they couldn't afford to feed them. It's been so dry that they couldn't grow much of their own hay. We didn't have any rain last fall, and we had a super warm winter. When we don't get snow in North Dakota, that hurts us a lot in the spring, because we need the snow to make it grow right away in the spring. And yeah, you get massive swings when you're out in the prairies there. So, this is a horrible cycle getting worse. There's actually a 130-year-old shipwreck that was visible because there's no water to cover it anymore. And we see the U.S. heating oil supplies lowest in decades ahead of the winter. That's not good, because what we got from the Galactics was that what we saw happen last year, here in Texas and in Arkansas, Oklahoma, over into Louisiana and other states were affected by that massive cold wave, that we'd see it multiple times this year. And, it may not be a quote unquote act of God with the big G, act of God with the little g, perhaps.
Right, the ones that are at the controls and can push the buttons for the harps that the angels play.
Yes, very well put.
Mm-hmm.
8 million Britons unable to buy essential food items in the last fortnight. And, of course, in the U.S., we don't really say fortnight, but, 2-week period.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. We see, this is getting to be more and more severe everywhere. It's just, and more people are waking up to this. I see this everywhere in comments, where people are saying, this just doesn't look right. I can't understand how we could have all these things going wrong at the same time. From the shipping to all this, the gas issues as well. It's just this incredible series of extraordinary events, one after another after another. Oh, by the way, the French Senate introduces a bill to do one of those dates for men for the entire country beginning January 1st, 2022. And most definitely we've seen that there are certain countries out there that are really moving forward with this. Really moving forward, as we, I even saw them in Germany handing out yellow stars to people to designate who was and who wasn't as far as this whole issue that we're talking about. NASA is going to attempt to nudge an asteroid next year around this time off trajectory that poses a threat to Earth. And this is what we were talking about before when we're talking about events like the Younger Dryas. We were talking about events like Sodom and Gomorrah. The revelation now that Sodom and Gomorrah, or Tel al-Hammam, which is thought to possibly be, what the city was, or one of the two cities that was spoken of in biblical terms, that there was an air burst. Something exploded in the air above the city and just created amazing temperatures that incinerated everybody. And, then we see things like this. If we, and with the technology we have that they're showing us, because again, we're way ahead of what they show us. Most people recognize this. There's tons of hidden technology, let alone the fact that there are beings involved in all this that are not originally from Earth. Not that human beings are necessarily fully originally from Earth either. But also beings that can go in between dimensions. More and more people are picking up on this. All you got to do is just even go through Twitter, and there's so many people that have multiple photos of number 46 saying, why is his face changing here? This looks weird. Or the number 2 and saying, what's going on with her neck? Or others as well. There's been so many cases where we have these glitches in the matrix. People are starting to wake up. The great all-powerful Wizard of Oz might not be exactly what we think.
I know. It's well, we've been taught one thing, and we've been taught from a very small age, so it is very difficult for people to break out of that mainstream information that they always feed us.
Yeah, and there's people that were taught to never question their elders, or they would get beaten.
Mm-hmm.
Literally beaten, beaten to a pulp. So that ingrains in a person to such an extent that they'll refuse to see something right in front of their face, just as the natives had no concept of the conquistador ships. So they're looking out into the sea and they just don't see them until they're up on their shores and shooting at them.
Mm-hmm.
So this DART, which this is the name of the mission, dubbed the DART mission, or the Double Asteroid Redirection Test. NASA basically will send a spacecraft to a pair of asteroids, the Didymos binary, and they're going to basically smash into one to try to change the trajectory. I wonder if at times beings out there have done something similar with much higher technology in order to, say, create an air blast that takes out Tel al-Hammam, or either Sodom or Gomorrah, in the past. And the locals looked up and heard about it and said, oh my God, it was God. They were bad sinners. They had to be destroyed. I mean, we could see how all these things kind of go together. Here we see that this Florida mom called for a mass exodus from public schools to a standing ovation. They want to silence us. They want to shut us down. At this point, what do we got to do? Well, we got to get out of the system en masse. And, now it's so common to see people that homeschool. And, when I was growing up back in the dark ages, hardly anybody homeschooled. But now a lot of people do. And I applaud them, you who are out there homeschooling. There's certain curriculum, and Cindy's done it. Cindy's homeschooled, and there's certain curriculum that you have to teach, but you could teach things with your own little twist on there.
Mm-hmm. You can, and what's really beautiful about homeschooling is they bring in the information that is mainstream. So when your child is sitting here reading this stuff, you can say, hey, you don't have to commit all of your eggs into this one story, because trust me, it changes. That way you have a dialogue between your child, parent child, and your child is open, can ask more questions. Everything is not carved in stone, which will make it easier for their brain to be more flexible and accept other truths later in life.
So the unknown Eocene Oligocene boundary mass extinction event was accompanied by climate change and super eruptions, followed by an explosion of life. But that was after 65% of the life on the planet, especially in certain types of mammals, were wiped out. And this is 30 million years ago. 30 million years ago, 63%. That's the proportion of mammal species that vanished from Africa and the Arabian Peninsula about 30 million years ago, after Earth's climate shifted from swampy to icy. But we're only finding about it now. So we hear a lot about how the climate's getting warmer, and it always changes. Everything always changes. Nothing stays still. That's the nature of the multiverse. Nothing stays still. Everything's always in change. Of course, change is natural. But some things are not natural. And some things, there's technology involved. When you look at all the abductions that we've seen over the years, anybody that's done any decent, studies into the abduction phenomenon, it becomes obvious that there's an awful lot of experimentation taking place. It really makes us wonder and think in so many ways, as if, entire planets can be viewed as nothing but labs to more advanced beings. Just the entire planet, the entire ecosystem, the entirety of this. Yeah, I was looking for an alternative to sphere because I don't want to get anybody irritated here. Mm-hmm. But, the entirety of all that we see here, in some ways, to some beings, may be nothing more than just an ongoing experiment, perhaps even with the express purpose of extracting data, extracting resources, maybe even extracting DNA for profit on the bigger scale of things. As above, so below. This is huge. So I asked Cindy, can you remote view this, check with the guides? Was this natural? Was this natural, or was this something that was, again, part of changing the experiment that was ongoing at that time frame?
When I looked at this one, and I didn't see anything here, I looked at this one and they showed me that this was quite a nasty massacre. They were showing me that there was technologies from above going down and murdering beings en mass, and it was quite brutal. Not something that I can see repeated. Actually, they realized that wasn't an okay thing to do when it comes to karmic repercussion. So.
Yeah. So and again, the entirety of this Earth and the solar system, we go through these cycles, these dark periods of time, as we talked about the different yugas and cycles in time. That's well understood through the Vedic system. Although there is definitely disagreements as to the dating and how quickly we go through this, because but then again, there's so much more to really dissect on the bigger thing, because there's cycles within cycles within cycles. But when we get into this time period, when we come into the lower vibrational frequencies in this particular area, and it drives us into, unfortunately, the influence of some not so benevolent beings that then take advantage of the situation. Thankfully, this is not where we are all the time, as we then go back on up out of the Dark Age. But their influence does extend a little bit into what we would call the Bronze Age on both sides. It's not like boom, as soon as we're out of the Kali Yuga, they're completely gone. They still have some influence. Everything is gonna take a little bit of work and a little bit of time. And so, here they're always giving us stuff because, with a twist, because they want to hide their presence. They're hiding their presence. But we can see the evidence of them all around if we just look a little bit closer. So, yeah, they have certain narratives that they want to maintain. And they're talking about dramatic climate change, so do they want to tell us that we were using cars 30 million years ago and, too much carbon emissions?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to give a ticket to that T-Rex. He's driving in his Lamborghini a little too fast, using too many carbon credits.
And exactly. That's right.
But what happens is we end up with different species. And this is, basically what this gets to, is that it's a real reset. But what comes later, after a few million years, these groups started popping up again in the fossil record, but with a new look. Fossil species that reappear later, after the big extinction event, were not the same as those that were found before. Almost like wiping the slate clean on an experiment and then starting to do another experiment.
Yeah, it seems kind of, like they do that a lot.
So, my question is, why in the world, if we have this massive, drought going on, are they not seeding the clouds? In a positive way.
Right. To help people.
As we know, there's a lot of funky looking clouds that have been up there, especially in the last 20 years or so. And I've shown this before. This is a list of 100 U.S. patents related to weather modification that goes all the way back to 1891. 1891. As you see, the patent number, and you could click on those and it'll give you more info. July 16th, 1891, method of producing rainfall. A rainmaker back in 1913. And then it gets into stuff about warfare as well, because warfare produces a lot of new technology. Is it any wonder why we're in constant warfare on this globe? As we see, artificial clouds, it just goes on and on and on, on and on and on. And this is just what's been declassified, and I'm sure there's tons more. When we look at these precisely cut H-shaped blocks at Pumapunku, and some archaeologists say these are 15,000 years old. What? That looks like something that was manufactured yesterday, or maybe a couple years ago. 15,000 years old?
Well, of course, they just use those chipping things, their hammer and a chipper.
These were very patient people. They're being very, very precise.
Yes.
And maybe they make one mistake and they got to start all
over. Yeah. Well, because that's what they taught us, and that must be true.
Oh, sure. It has to be. It has to be. And again, this is down around Lake Titicaca, Bolivia, Peru, Chile, and that area down there, which at some point in time is bucket list material. Yeah, hopefully we will get to see it in person. It's interesting too that so many of these ancient structures, the older you go back, the farther you go back in history, the more advanced the technology is. And that says a lot right there. It's again, wake up. Mm-hmm. To think that some people think that this world is 6,000 years old, the earth itself. Again, makes you just shake your head. Well, the reset may be, as so many people have been wiped out and so many different species have been wiped out time and time again with different cataclysms. Forbidden Archaeology should be on everybody's reading list. This is a very old book that was written by Michael A. Cremo and Richard L. Thompson. And, one of my favorite authors is Richard L. Thompson. As, he delved deep into this ancient history, tied it in with the extraterrestrial interdimensional aspect of things as he learned more. This is a scientist that recognized that things don't fit. They just don't fit. And so, he got fascinated with the Vedas, and he got fascinated with the technology therein, and fascinated that they talked openly about the quote-unquote gods, the devas, these beings, and the demons, the asuras, using technology to fly overhead, and people it was just an everyday thing. Ah, there goes so-and-so again. Hey, check it out. He's got a new ship. That's kind of nice.
I know, just as common as it is to look across the street, your neighbor's got a new car. Well, that's what they did.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just a given, as well as the fact that there's so many different species all over the galaxy. Because they interacted with them, they remembered this from before the controllers set in. And the controllers gave us, the idea that we're alone in this. There's just, heaven, hell, here, angels, demons, God, you and me. That's it. There's nobody else out there.
And you better not go looking for anybody else either. That's sin.
Yes. There are things that are millions of years old that are manufactured. And again, if you don't have this book in your library, I would suggest go out and get it. It's just a classic. It's just a classic. A metallic sphere from South Africa with 3 parallel grooves around the equator. This was found in Precambrian mineral deposit. It's said to be 2.8 billion years old. Billion with a B. Now, it's fascinating too, because in the Vedic point of view, the Earth is dated pretty much what science says. We're talking billions of years, not 6,000 years. So they knew things that they could only have known if at one time we had far more advanced technology and much better understanding of who we were, who we are, where we came from, the fact that there's other beings out there that are always interacting with us. All that was washed away. You just have to look at the dominant religious structure on the planet. Again, it comes out of the Abrahamic traditions. 60+% of the globe goes through the Abrahamic mindset and conditioning. That again teaches you there's one God, which there is one God with a big G. There's one source of everything. So in that sense, yes. But you can't name it. Or, we had, we always get people that make comments and they just show that they haven't really thought about anything. They haven't gone deep. They haven't introspected. They haven't, cross-studied all these different philosophies and systems. Well, why should I have to? I picked the right one. It's the one I was brought up with. And if I ever questioned it, Dad would whip my ass, or Mom might. This is, the fear-based system. And, my father went through Catholic school all the way, K through 12. And he would share with me, how, the nuns would use rulers on their knuckles or on the back of their head. This is how so much of the world was brought up. This is why you're terrified to bring up anything. And now we have the powers that be acting very similarly to, this do not question. Do not question. You have a coin-like object from a lawn in Illinois. It was found at a depth of 114 feet below the surface. So according to the Illinois State Geological Survey, this looks to be 200 to 400,000 years old. So much for a 6,000-year Earth. Again, society has been restarted so many times. These things go on and on and on. There's thousands of different anomalous artifacts that we have found that just throw everything into chaos if you're looking at what we are given as the official story of Earth.
Right. And unless you're just completely limited, you really got to look at these things and be able to open your mind. There's even artifacts that look like cell phones, laptops that are carved in stone, from a lot of these ancient things. It's just something that you got to question at some point. You're like, okay, hey, who's telling me this story and how true is it?
And this other mysterious letters that you see written there came from a block of marble, a depth of 60 to 70 feet deep, that they dated to 500 to 600 million years old. So yeah, and this is just, you're just touching the surface with this. And this, between the two channels, we've done 3,000 videos and spoke about these things so many times. But yeah, we have to keep bringing these things up, even though now it's so limited with what they show as far as the numbers that people that we're reaching. But we know that those are just numbers that can be adjusted any way they prefer to. But again, wake up to the reality that this is a planet that has been under, well, a false narrative, to say the least. And we have much more power than they want you to know. Co-creative power. They always want you to give your power away. Conform, right? Think in terms of, the movie They Live, obey, don't question, conform. That's what they want. But in reality, we should be questioning everything. And, we shouldn't be conforming, because each one of us is unique. And the true God, with the big G, the source that we're all a part of, again, because we have to be a part of it. How could we not be a part of it and it be the all? Little questions that are so simple, but again, destroy the narrative. It's just obvious. It's so obvious. When Yeshua, that most know as Jesus, said, I and the Father are one, they picked up stones to stone him. But he understood the bigger picture. And he also said that greater things you will do. So if he was unique in that aspect, how could that possibly be if we were going to do greater things yet?
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself these questions. The official narrative does not add up. There's a reason.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys so much for your support on Ko-Fi and our Patreons as well. We couldn't do it without you guys. And also, do check out Medicinal Foods. You can make some super smart mocha latte combos. And use coupon code EEA to get 5% discount off. And then as you fill up the cart, you can get up to 25% off and free shipping. It does support the channel. Keep waking up, people. Make sure you're subscribed. Have the bell clicked, and share. We gotta wake people up. This is the big job in front of us. Wake up the masses so we can actually change this narrative. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.